Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kim. I am a financial wellness coach here at the Centers for Finance and Education at New Hampshire Federal Credit Union. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming overspending. This is a issue that a lot of singles but also couples go through. So there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to be going over today. We're first going to start by talking about the center, what we do, what we offer, and then we're going to go ahead and jump right into the presentation. Throughout this presentation, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. I will not be answering them during the webinar, though. Okay, so what we're doing is just because we found out that a lot of people don't ask questions because they don't want to kind of interrupt the presentation, which is admirable. So thank you. But so with the questions, what's going to happen is when you ask them, they're going to come to me, but they're going to come to me after the presentation in a format where I will be able to get all the questions. And so what we'll do is the following business day of the presentation, we send out a recap email with the actual recording of the presentation, but also we'll have a list of those questions along with the answers. And we also keep everything anonymous, so you don't have to worry about having your name linked to the question or anything like that. Okay? So if you do have a question throughout the presentation, if you go to your control panel, usually it's in the upper right hand of your screen. It's going to be like a little orangey red button with an arrow. If you click that, it will expand that window. And if you look down, you're going to see a tab that says questions. That's where you're going to go. That's where you're going to type in your question. And we'll get those answered for you in the recap email. Okay? All right. So here about New Hampshire Federal Credit Union, we do have our free financial webinar, so you're attending one today. We do have where you can visit our site. I recommend just going to www.nhfcu.org. And there will be a tab that says Centers for Finance, and you can see all the upcoming stuff that's happening with the center and upcoming classes. And it will also have a link to our video channel, so you'll have access to all of that. In addition to having the educational classes, we also offer to talk with someone one-on-one about some of your financial needs and what we can do to assist that. So if you're interested in that, again, in the recap email, I will have all that information. But if you wanted to jot that down now, our center's phone number is 603-224-7731, extension 330, or you can email us at centerfe@nhfcu.org. All right, so let's go ahead and let's jump right in. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask at any time. It won't interrupt the class at all. Okay? All right, so let's talk overspending. It is definitely an addiction, and there's many reasons for it as far as overspending and why people overspend. But if you get down to the core of it, it's really a behavior. Okay, it's something that you started to do, and then you started to do more often, and it became a behavior. Let's go ahead and let's talk about coffee. Okay, that's usually the big one for a lot of people, and it might not be considered overspending to you, but it's mostly what we're going to do is we're going to look at the behavior, right? So before you started to get coffee every day, What did you do? Probably can't remember, right? So what mostly happened was, oh, you might get it on the weekend. It was a cheat on the weekend. Go out, get a nice coffee, and oh, this is delightful. And then you said, you know what? I have extra time on Tuesday. I can get a coffee this morning. So then you start getting it Tuesday. And then it might start off with just getting it twice a week, and then it turns into 3 times a week, then it turns into 4 times a week, and you can see how that behavior is growing, right? And before you know it, it becomes your morning routine. Right? It's a behavior, it's a routine. It becomes part of what you do. You get up, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you get your coffee. It's what you do. Well, what happens with overspending, no matter what you're looking at, it becomes a behavior. Whether you're shopping when you're angry, you're shopping when you're sad, you just like shopping, you know, something, and whatever you're shopping for, it could be anything, right? It all comes down to behavior, and it gets to the point where you feel like you're out of control, and yet you still can't say no. Okay. So, and what we don't realize is we think that this this type of spending is making us feel good, but what we have to look at is overspending can cause financial stress, right? Because you're spending money and then you realize afterwards that you don't have it, and now you're stressing about that. So that's stress. Emotional stress, you can see a lot of this is stress. Marital stress, which can all then show up as anxiety, can then show up as depression, can affect you in your personal relationships, can actually affect you in your business relationships. Okay. We work with a lot of employer groups because we try and bring this financial education to their employees to help them. Because what we don't want is them to be stressed at work and can't focus on work. Because if you can't focus on work, and then due to stress can manifest itself into actual sickness. So not only are you stressing about finances, you're stressing about it at work, and then you might get ill, and therefore you have to take days off of work. And if you're stressing at work and your productivity goes down, guess what? There's the chance that you might actually be let go, right? And so that's a whole nother stress. So you can see how it really builds, and it's like, ooh, right? And they can just turn into just flat out financial problems, credit problems, excessive debt. And then you have that guilt that you want to kick yourself in the butt, but because it's a behavior, you keep doing it, and you're like, and you know you're doing it. Why am I doing it? So you still have that acknowledgement that you know you're overspending, but say, how do I stop? Most people think it is to earn more money. That's not the case, because your spending is a behavior. So no matter how much money you make, you still have that negative behavior, right? So even if you went from $50,000 to $70,000 a year, you still have the same spending habits. You just probably buy more expensive things. So unfortunately, when people think they can outspend their behavior, it's not true. Okay. So again, a lot of people use this to reward themselves, but it causes more stress. So you're really not doing anything for you. Or you make excuses. Splurge on holidays. I was helping a single mom, and she was like, we worked on a budget, worked out what was needed, and it was time for her daughter's birthday, and we budgeted a small amount. Um, and she ended up going past that amount 5 times. And then all of a sudden, she couldn't pay the vet bill. And it was like, that's why we work, and that's why we do this. And it's hard in the beginning when you start budgeting, because you're really changing the way, again, you're changing your behavior with money. And you're just so used to doing it the way you've always done it that it takes a little time. Okay. Um, but the excuses really hurt too, because then you're like, oh. This is just a quick video on financial anxiety. I'm not going to go into that just because we have so much information to touch on, but it will be when I send this to you, you will have access to that video. Okay? Here's another reason. So we're going to jump into the reasons of overspending. So, retail therapy. You may all have heard about retail therapy, or you might actually do it. And yes, we do have a picture of a female on here going shopping, but it is across both genders, right? So typically, certain genders have certain things that they spend their money on, but it's retail therapy nonetheless, okay? I have a male friend that loves to redo his vehicle, constantly updating it and putting new things on and doing this and doing that. He spends thousands of dollars on his vehicle. That's still considered retail therapy. Okay? You're getting excited. If you had a bad day at work, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go get something for myself. I'm going to make myself feel better. That's what people do. Okay? Whether you're male, female, both genders do it. Okay? This next one I am going through right now. Mom guilt. So, if you are a mom, no matter the age of the kid, I am sure you have dealt with this, or even dad guilt. You want your kids to have the best, mostly the best opportunities. So we have a little 1.5-year-old. And right now we have nothing outside for him as far as a jungle gym. But, we see our friends that have like little play areas and great play areas for their kids. And we're like, oh, it's like we want to do that. We want to have that for him because, first off, a lot of energy, right? But also because, we know how important it is to have with his mobility and working on his motor skills. So right now what we're doing is, on the weekends we take him down to the playground and he just goes crazy at the playground. The only thing is, with Mama, I can't particularly help him at the moment. But he's, when he goes through the tubes and everything, it's great to see him. And it would be great to have that at home, but we just don't have the finances to do that. So we don't. But this is, a lot of people try and keep up and put a lot of things on debt instruments, which we'll talk about, just to kind of stay up with, and what we say is keep up with the Joneses, right? So here are the 4 C's of debt. And so we have credit cards, which is a given. This is most people's reason, and when they're overspending, this is how they can do it, is through credit cards, right? If you didn't have a credit card, then you most likely would not be able to overspend because you would have nothing to put those products on. You would have to pay in cash, or you would have to use your debit card. And your debit card comes right from your checking account. And so if you don't have the funds, you wouldn't be able to buy it. Whereas with the credit card, you're able to purchase it. Okay. Coffee. This is a big one. And most people don't realize how much money they're spending on coffee, right? Because it's small amounts, maybe once, twice, three times a day. But when you're only doing it and it costs $3 to $5, you're like, oh my God, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's $3 to $5. But when you do it so often and you do it every single day, it adds up. I had one of my friends, when she wasn't sure where her money was going, we actually sat down and looked at her statements. She was spending $900 at Dunkin's a month. It was bad. Okay. Children, that's easy. I mean, you just look at anything for a child and it's expensive. And again, you usually, as a mom or a dad, you want the best for your children, and so you sometimes will make bad financial decisions for the short-term gain. Okay? And Christmas. Christmas is huge. A lot of people go into debt for Christmas, and it's one of those categories that I've never understood why, because it's one of those that happens every year. You know exactly the day that is happening, and so I've always wondered, I'm like, why don't people budget for Christmas? Like all of a sudden people were like, "Oh my God, it's December. I have to spend thousands of dollars on, everybody." It's like, no, you don't. No, 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 you don't. But yeah, it's amazing how much money people spend on. Like once I started coaching, um, oh man, I was astounded by what people will pay for Christmas. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It's disgusting. So it just adds up, right? It just adds up. So how did we get this way? So what is your earliest memory of money? So a lot of the financial behaviors that you might have today may have come from watching your parents, okay? And now you can say, oh, mom and dad, but but it also may be it's something that slowly crept up over time and became your behavior. All right. So let's see. So when we look at your earliest memory of money, who spent it and on what? How did people react? Who saved money? You know, what do you remember about family fights about money? My gram was absolutely amazing, and she saved for everything. She didn't have a credit card. She didn't have anything like that, but she grew up in an era where that wasn't even around. Credit cards didn't really come into play until 1950 and really didn't get popular until 1970. My grandma was born in 1913. And so it's one of those where we saw how Graham did it versus how our parents did it. Totally different, right? Our family fought about money. I'm sure most families fight about money if they don't budget. And anything special you ever wanted and got, and it caused an issue, or did you not get it? My mom, the way she grew up, she did not have anything. And therefore, she told us kids, because I asked her when I was a bit older, I'm like, Ma, why did you get us everything we wanted? And she's like, because I had nothing. I wanted to give you guys the childhood that I never had. So my mom was willing to put herself into debt and overspend because she knew how she grew up without anything. So it can be that drastic. You can go from nothing to everything, right? So that's something that you want to look back on and say, is this something that I got from my parents? I saw the way my mom spent, and I'm like, I don't want to be like she just got she just you could tell that she overspent, and I didn't want to lose my money, right? I kind of went kind of like in between that as far as spending goes, but sometimes going back and understanding where you might have picked up some of your behaviors could help you understand and be like, oh, okay, that's why I do that. So our attitudes toward money are formed by what we learn from our parents. Again, this can be learned as far as copying them or saying, ooh, I don't like what they're doing, and then doing the opposite. That's usually typically what that you can go back and forth. Message from peers or in society in general. So that's, I think, right now, that's the biggest or bigger issue right now. And that's just a personal assumption. Is just because I do a class on marketing, and the marketing that gets bombarded to people about what's true, what's not true, it's crazy, and just trying to take your money. So we talk about getting your defenses up to block against those type of marketing aspects. And those we'll talk about kind of the tips on how to stop overspending. Do the total opposite of what your parents did. You can do that. The subject is seldom discussed calmly and rationally in families. Money and finances is a very hot topic. Very hot topic because most people don't know how to talk about it. And they don't feel like they have a safe space. They feel like they get defensive. It's a very common thing for people to get to this very defensive place. And it's not because they want to argue. Um, it's because you grew up one way with finances. Your significant other grew up a different way with finances. It's almost like my husband and I with laundry. I grew up in a household that did not have a washer or dryer. So me and my dad would load up the car with 6 people worth of laundry. Because we have my mom and I have my 3 sisters and my dad. We'd go to the laundromat once a week with loads and loads of clothes and towels. And we would spend almost the whole day at the laundromat washing clothes. But that was our idea of getting it done, right? When I say I'm getting the laundry done, everything gets done. There's not one single piece. When I say I'm getting laundry done, then if it's 5 loads of laundry, it's 5 loads. If it's 6, it's 6. If it's 2, it's 2. But everything is getting done. There are no clothes, no towels, nothing in the hampers. Husband was the opposite. So at his home, they had a washer and dryer. So they would do loads every day. And so when he tells me he's getting the laundry done, what he meant was he was going to get a load done. So you can see where that miscommunication is, and it used to drive me crazy. I'm like, you said you're getting the laundry done. Why didn't you do the laundry? He's like, I did do the laundry. But because we grew up separately and we had a different history with the laundry, it became a like little fighting point. And we didn't realize it until we actually discussed it. Same thing goes with money, right? Different histories with money, different spending habits, different saving habits. And so unless you talk about it and understand that, okay, this is a safe place, why in the world do you do it that way? you know, that's something that's going to help. So there are money types. There's spenders, there's bingers, and there's hoarders. So I would say I'm definitely a binger. I love to save money, but then I love to spend it too. But it's all in a certain time frame. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm in saving mode again. Um, my husband could spend till the cows came home. So, it's one of those. So you have different money types. So it's good to know, especially if you have a significant other, what does that, or what do they do? What's their money type, and how does that kind of work along with you, right? So there's also some other types of money types into like our attitudes on spending. So you have the masters here that believe the greater wealth means greater power. What this means is they tie their self worth into their finances, which can not be the most healthy. There's the worriers, big time anxiety about their finances. Uh, they feel it's their responsibility to control their money. Spend a lot of emotional energy imagining and worrying about what things could happen. Most hoarders are worriers. Okay. You have avoiders. They ignore, postpone, or delegate tasks of everyday money management. So I would actually, avoiders can be worriers as well, because what they do is they worry if they do anything or go forward that there's going to be some type of backlash or something. So they kind of postpone it. Money monks. They fear that accumulated wealth or spending habit could control or corrupt them, limiting their freedom. They distrust money and others with their money. So I actually have an acquaintance who was like this until we talked about it. Very religious, and he thought having money or saving up money for retirement was not what God wanted him to do. He's like, if I have all this money, I could be giving this away. And what we talked to him about was, well, if you don't save for your retirement, you won't be able to live, and so you're going to be one of those people that are needing the assistance. And how is it by you planning it that way, how are you going to be helping people when you won't be even able to help yourself? So just turning his mindset that way, he's like, that makes sense. And so sometimes it's just kind of getting out of that particular bubble and just kind of understanding the situation. So typically the dynamics of your relationship will fit in one of 5 patterns. So one of you is an overspender and the other is a hoarder. You are both spenders, one mild and the other more extreme. One partner's overspending has turned the other into a hoarder, which can happen if one party is just spending, the other one's like, oh my God, that's my security net. They're spending it all. Now I have to start hiding it. I have to hoard it. I have to, just so they don't have access to it. It can get bad. And then you have the opposite. If you have one partner that's an extreme hoarder, it might prompt the other one to overspend just for the sake of overspending. One partner's extreme hoarding is causing him or her to view the other's moderate spending as excessive, which can do that. And this is just, and it's funny because when we talk about overspending, most people think it's a very simple concept, and as you can tell, I mean, we're only about halfway through, and it's a very complicated subject when you're actually looking at it because it's looking at people's behaviors, and not just behaviors, but also their psychological things that are happening, and how far back does it go? Is there something that triggered it? So there's a lot of things that go into overspending. Okay. Um, so there are different types of spenders. So there's the bargain hunters. So for instance, you might see the people that have the basement full, like they're spending money like crazy, but or they're shopping and they have no more room in their basement, so now they have to buy storage units or this or that, and it's like it's become such a behavior that they don't know how to start. Peer approval, name brands. If you see all your friends going on a vacation, you might want to go on a vacation, even though you might not have the finances to do so. Um, it could just be a habit, or an addiction that. I had one person that when they are bored, they would just go on to QVC because they're just bored, and then they just buy stuff, not needing it, not wanting. They just bored spenders. It's amazing how much they wasted just from being bored. And it's like, how about you pick a hobby other than shopping? So that's stuff that you want to look at too. Find that if you do know you're an overspender, look at when you're doing the spending or why you're doing the spending, and kind of just be, aware. And then you'd be amazed at it once you figure that out, because the person who is going on QVC, I'm like, well, when do you go on to QVC? They're like, oh, when I'm at work. But you can go on QVC when you're at work? Well, I work the night shift and it gets very slow. And so I just go on QVC. Okay, so you just do it because you're bored. Yeah. Okay, so let's change that so you're not bored. So it's going back and looking at things like that are definitely going to help you when you want to identify where you're spending, why you're spending, and going from there. So there's 5 stages of spending urges. Again, this is kind of identifying which one you may fall into if you are the spender. I know some of you on here may be on this to help a significant other, so it might not be you. But so you have trigger, one-time good or bad experience. This is the boredom, so you're feeling something and then you just go shopping, right? Consent, a desire and decisions merge as you quickly identify what you want and give yourself permission to get it. Action, usually marked by brief euphoria. Reckoning, the momentarily high has passed and you're overcome with feelings of guilt, shame, self-hate, and worry. So we do this a lot where when we're talking about the feelings in the beginning, the stresses and things like that come up, that's usually what happens after the spending has happened. And then the letdown. Back where you started, feeling unhappy, empty, and depressed. And this is where it can turn into a cycle, okay? Where you're trying to get that good feeling back. So, again, after you actually spend the funds, and you might not get this until a few days later, or if you use a credit card, if you get your credit card statement, shame. Some people have the denial. They'll just pay the minimum balance on their credit card and don't think about the interest rate. It's just, I'll just pay. I'm just paying the minimum. I'll get it paid off eventually. Usually they will say once you get your tax return or a raise, that you'll take care of it. But again, that doesn't take care of the behavior, right? And I had a lot of clients that would say this, and the thing that I would always go to is you never know what's going to happen when it comes to the government. So I would never rely on a tax return to pay anything. That's not guaranteed to come back to you. Okay? If you got a refund the year before, it is not guaranteed that you're going to get a refund the next year. Okay? So it's something that I always tell people, if you end up getting money back, fantastic. It's unexpected income. Do not expect it. Okay? Secrecy. This is a big one that we deal with a lot of our couples. Is you keep it in the dark because you're ashamed of your spending and you don't want your spouse to know. I tell you that the longer you hold off, the worse it's going to be, right? And a lot of couples will come to us because it is a very safe place. And it's like, yes, it sucks once the other one finds out because they're usually not happy. But it's one of those things where when we talk about it, we say, nope, we are here. We are here now. This is what we're working on. Okay? Yes, it sucks. That happened in the past. But now we're going to move forward. We're going to go on from here. Okay? So the way that we overcome overspending is we want to get on a budget. And I know most of you are like, oh God, that word is evil. But what it does is it helps you manage your funds and actually have your funds go to where you actually want them to go. I know that sounds weird. But the budget is supposed to be a working budget, a working monthly budget where you'll make it up for the upcoming month. You'll say, this is our expected income. This is where our bills expenses need to go. But you know what? I want to make sure that I have $100 for shopping or $200 for shopping. And if your income supports it, then you just put it in the budget. Most people think a budget is restrictive and it doesn't allow you to do the things that you want it to do. That is false. A budget is what helps you stay within your means so you can still do all those fun things that you like to do, maybe not every month, but it allows you to do those things or save up for those things. If you realize that you've been overspending and you don't have the income to support the overspending, then what we do instead is we start to save. And you save a little here, a little there, so you can do those fun things and go out and do those, okay? But the budget gives you permission rather than spending it and then being all depressed. And now you owe all this debt and all this interest, and it's just you're spending way too much money on things. And most of the things you don't even know what you spent your money on half the time. Every client that I go through and we go through their statements, they have no idea what they spent their money on. I don't know what that is. That's probably just some random purchase. Oh, if we go through my statement, I can tell you what every single charge is on there. Even if it's from Amazon, I can tell you what charge it is. You know, and that's because we budget for it and we know exactly where our money is going and what we use toward what. Okay, so a budget is extremely helpful. So you can work by yourself, or you can, if you have a significant other, you can definitely work with your partner on this. If you do have a partner, doing it with them is ideal, right? Because you both have needs that need to be met. And it's always good that everybody who is contributing financially to the household knows what's going on financially. God forbid something happens, they need to know. For instance, we budget, we have our Excel spreadsheets and our Google Docs. I make it. I love Excel. I love doing finance, and so I'm the creator of it. Then my husband will go in, he will review it, and then let me know if it's good for its finalization, or if there's things we need to add that I might have missed, or things that he may need in the upcoming month that we want to make sure we put money away for. Okay? And then what I'll do is then I will revamp or update the budget and have him review it again. And we'll go from there. Okay? And doing it this way, if you are by yourself, having an accountability partner can really help you, and having someone that you can talk to about your finances, especially if you're looking at a big purchase or something. They can help you. Okay. And if you're having a weak moment, your accountability partner can help. Okay. So definitely work on a plan. Again, if you have a significant other, work together on this. I would say not at the same time, because that's when you can get into the fight. But have one person do it like we do, and then have the other person look. But you want to be able to be open to suggestions. Okay? So these are the communication no-nos. So we also have a presentation on actually working with your significant other and the do's and don'ts of that. And so we have a whole webinar just on that. But no angry explosions, okay? When you guys look and you build the budget and you're working on, changing your finances, it's going to be emotional. It is. It just is. You're changing your behavior. Change stinks. We all hate change to some degree. And when you're doing it with your finances, it's just as bad. So you don't ever want to use the I's, the U's, you're spending our money. Don't. Even if one person is spending more, remember, you guys didn't have an agreement. So yeah, they might have spent more money, but you never had an agreement not to spend it. So that's how I want you to look at it, is don't get on each other's case. Just say, whoa, we spent a lot on this. I know this is something that, is needed, but maybe not to this extent. Maybe we'll drop that down a little bit, right? No scare tactics. That does not work. That just makes the person want to hide the charges from you. That's all that does. Okay. No nasty accusations. If you'd stop acting like a spoiled brat, it's not. I mean, that's not how you should be talking to your significant other anyway. But also try not to sound like you're higher than the other. I try and say this simple enough so you can understand. That's just being mean. Things like that. You don't want to do that. I know that there might be a lot of strong feelings when it comes to the finances, especially when you start going through them and actually seeing where your money went. There's going to be a lot of heavy feelings. But you always have to remember that you guys came from two different financial places. Certain things mean different things to each other, okay? And when you realize that your financial language is different, sometimes that can really help you be like, okay, so what does this mean to you? When I say save for something, what does this mean for you? You'd be surprised that your definition of saving might be different than theirs. So it might have to start by just creating that language and that understanding of, and then come to a place where you both agree, okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay. Um, and that has like nothing to do with finances. It's just understanding how the other one thinks, and you never even realize that that was an issue, right? So again, it's more than just numbers with this. Um, Separate checking account for bills. This helps out tremendously. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this, um, because there's some couples that want to make sure that their money stays their own. Okay, we're not like that. We're like, nope, we're one household. Everything goes into one account. Much easier for us to take care of bills that way. It's just the way we do it. Expenses, if it's all in one place, I can keep track of it better. But some people like to have their own finances because they feel like they're not, especially if they've been in a previous relationship where they've gotten burned. Sometimes it's just for that security purpose, and that's totally fine. Okay, you guys talk about it, figure out what's going to work best for you, and go from there. Having a separate checking account for bills can be extremely helpful for certain couples that need to have their other money separate. Okay, and there's two ways to actually have that separate bills account. Some people will just separate out the bills. So, okay, I got the mortgage, I got the electricity, you get the water, the internet, the phones, and they'll split it up by bill. And then, okay, so this is how much I pay per month for my set of bills. So you put that amount in there whatever you need to put in per paycheck into that account. Another way to do it is percentages. So usually there's going to be one person that does make more money than the other. That's very typical. And so sometimes they're like, well, because you make more money, you need to put more in. It's just because you make a higher percentage. And that's true. So what they would do is you add up the monthly bills, and then you go ahead and divide that by the income, and then you get a percentage, right? Or divide it, and let's say it ends up being like 35%. Then they would put in, 35, and so you would be able to put in. So the person who makes the most would put in like 65, and the person that made a lot less would put in 35, and then that way they're paying equally for their amount of income that's coming in. So it's equal. They're paying 50-50 on the bills according to their income. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do that, or you can just be like my husband and I. We have, even though everything goes into one account, our checking account is just meant for bills, but we have like 14 different savings accounts that we put money into. So everything gets funneled through the checking account, and then I go in and disperse money into the different savings of where it needs to go. And then whatever is left in the checking account is meant for bills that are coming out. And so we don't typically use our debit card too often unless we budgeted for something, and we did. For instance, if we budgeted to go get a wheelbarrow and the funds were still in the checking account at that point, we'd use our debit card. But for most things, we don't use our debit card for at all. Okay. And as I mentioned, we have sub-accounts. We call them expense savings accounts. So these are great because what they offer is, for instance, if you want to save for something, like vacation, Christmas, new vehicle, anything like that. We always recommend having a separate savings for each actual goal, because if you have it all together, it's much easier to overspend on one thing. So, for instance, if you had vacation and Christmas together, and you had $2,000 saved, and 1,000 was supposed to be for Christmas, and 1,000 was supposed to be for vacation, but it's not designated that way, and it just says savings, and there's $2,000 in there, in your head, because we're dealing with psychology, and remember, we need to kind of fight that. Is you see $2,000 in there, so you might say, "Oh, if I spend 1,500 on Christmas, that's going to be fine because we have the money." But then when it comes to vacation, all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my God, I overspent on Christmas. We don't have enough money for the trip we planned." It can get really, really hard to keep track of things. So we usually say, get sub accounts, and these can be savings accounts, and for instance, like for us, you can change the title of your savings. You can say, this is for Christmas, this is vacation. So when you go online and go to transfer money, you can see that, okay, I'm going to take $100 from my checking account, put that right into the vacation fund. Okay. It helps out a lot, and it helps you from overspending in a category that you did not plan on overspending in. Okay. Okay. Other helpful suggestions. And keep credit cards in the freezer. I definitely don't think you should have your credit cards on you if you have credit cards, and especially if credit cards are what got you in to a particular predicament too. There's been studies that show that credit card usage, people spend 200 times what they were planning on spending when using a credit card, just because of the convenience level, and it doesn't come directly out of your account. Also, one thing I like to say is, if you do have an issue with buying stuff and it's online, and it's, merchants know that using a credit card, you're going to spend more. And they know if it's convenient, you're going to spend more. That's what they plan on. Okay. Amazon, one click, don't recommend it. The reason why those things, they make it so easy to buy, is because they're trying to lessen the time frame that you have to think about that purchase, and to think, do you really need it? Do you really want it? Or does it just look cool? Okay. And with those buy one, buy now, click one click, and things like that, it's very easy to just overspend. And then you might look at your credit card statement like, oh my God, what did I do? Okay. So definitely, I say remove your credit cards from all that type of stuff and just enter them in. If you're going to buy online, enter them in. Obviously, if you go to like Chewy, and that's where you get your pet food and things like that, or the grocery store, or things like that, that makes sense. But still, have yourself on a budget and tell yourself, I'm not spending more than this amount. Okay. Big purchases, 48-hour rule on big purchases. This is something where you notice that we don't have a set number. It's really what you consider a big purchase, because $100 may not be big to you, but may be huge to someone else. Yours might be $500. Someone else's might be, oh no, it's usually, if anything, around 1,000. So it's all depending on your financial situation, on what you consider a big purchase. That will be your guide, and therefore weight on it. There's been many a times my husband and I have thought about doing a big purchase. We waited and we're like, nope, not gonna do it. Or we'd be like, yep, we're good to go, let's do it. Use gift cards when you're eating out. A lot of people like to do that, usually in December. So what my husband and I do is, usually we set aside a certain amount of our Christmas money. So when the restaurants in our local area are doing, oh, if you buy $100, you get $25 free. Well, what we do is we love going out to eat, but we have a certain budget on going out to eat. And so we actually will use that. We'll buy gift cards, and then we'll usually get the free $25, and therefore we'll usually we usually will get about 12 gift cards. Um, and then we have them for each month. When we go out, we have the gift card, but we also got the extra 25 or whatever it might be, and it's really nice to do it that way. Also, be honest with yourself. That's going to be the biggest one, right? If you go behind, if you have a significant other and you go behind their back, that should set up a red flag for you that something's happening that you do not feel good about. And, even if it might be hard, maybe setting something up with us, and if you just need help talking to them, there's other avenues too. They can talk to them. But really, when it comes to finances, being an open book is going to be the best bet. Because if you're struggling with something, your significant other can probably help you with that, okay? So that brings us to our last frame here, and this is our information. Again, send our FE at nhfcu.org, 603-224-7731, extension 330. And if you need anything, please reach out. Again, I will send out the recap email next business day, and then also we'll have any questions. If there was any questions during the presentation, I'll go ahead and make those into the email with the answers for you. Okay? So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.